Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast giving America hope since 2018. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox-Bolton of the New Deal, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. The New Deal is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. From attorneys generals, to state senators, to mayors, to school board members, these are the people that are pushing policies and politics that will respond to climate change, rebuild our economy, address racial injustice, and restore our democracy. These are incredibly talented people who have dedicated themselves to public service when their country and their communities needed it the most. Check out newdealleaders.org to see what I'm talking about. As we head into fall and the weather cools down, I decided to take our listeners south to the shores of Florida. This episode, I talk with St. Petersburg, Florida Mayor Rick Kriseman about the influx of remote workers, housing affordability, climate change, and how he decides to run or not run for elective office. Mayor Kriseman is an attorney who previously served on the city council and in the state legislature before being elected mayor in 2013 and 2017. He's pursued a number of fascinating efforts to support small businesses, engage the public in budgeting, and increase equity. Enjoy. Mayor Rick Kriseman, welcome to An Honorable Profession. It is wonderful to be speaking with you today.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm honored to be on your podcast.
So I want to start, I think, where all the conversations start, can you talk a little bit about how your city has fared during this COVID crisis and sort of what do you see for the immediate future?
Yeah, truthfully, it's in some ways been very challenging. You know, my city is in a state where the state government, from the governor to the legislature, have done everything they can to take away my authority to try and keep my community safe. And so it's been very challenging, and it's gotten worse certainly within the last 6 months. At least as the pandemic was beginning, myself and other mayors around the state of Florida were able to take actions to try and keep our community safe, and we did that. And in fact, I've said oftentimes that our governor should be thanking mayors across the state of Florida because a whole lot more folks would have unfortunately become ill or died. And a lot more of our businesses would have suffered had we not taken the actions that we took. Having said that, my city has fared pretty well overall. You know, we were able to keep our positivity rate in control as much as possible. Our hospitalizations, we were able to keep those numbers as in control as possible, where we weren't experiencing some of the crisis that other communities were suffering. We got money into the hands of our small businesses and the employees of those small businesses very quickly with something we called our Fighting Chance Fund. Well before the CARES Act monies were released, we had already gotten over $6 million into our community to try and provide assistance, and tried to look for ways to allow our businesses to continue to be able to operate, but do so safely, where we were keeping our community safe. And so as a result of that, I think we haven't lost as many businesses as some other communities. As a city government, I didn't have to lay off any employees. I was able to continue to keep everyone on payroll. And we've even, as we enter this new fiscal year, and our council will be approving our final budget on Thursday, we will be reducing our millage rate, even coming out of the pandemic. So I'm very optimistic of how we've fared through the pandemic.
And I want to talk to you about some of those economic revitalization efforts, because you've been a real leader, not only for your community, but for all of us nationwide looking at it. But first, I want to talk about what you talked about, this dynamic of having a state government that is not only sort of anti-science and anti-health, but is undermining your ability to be able to act. And do you have any advice for mayors that may be, blue dots in red states that are trying to navigate state encroachment on your ability to govern your community?
You're seeing it happen nationally right now. Organizations like ALEC, who are, spreading all these preemptive policies around the country to Republican-led legislatures, are really making it difficult for all of us to do our jobs. I mean, We know our communities better than any of the state representatives or senators, and certainly better than our governor, at least in Florida. But I suspect that's true for other states with Republican governors. And so, I think we have to challenge them when we can legally. We have not shied away from filing suit against the state legislature and against the governor if we thought that their preemptions were overreach. I am very vocal, and I think we have to be. Oftentimes our voice is our greatest weapon, and it's the only one we have at our disposal, especially when you're in a state like in Florida where the House, the Senate, governor, and all but one cabinet position are controlled by Republicans. And so to take the philosophy that, I'm not going to say anything because I'm going to try and get along, it isn't going to work, because they're going to continue to do the policies, put those policies in place that take away our authority. And if they're going to do it, I'm not going down without a fight, whether that's through the courts or it's through the press. And so I think, that's a weapon that we have to use, and we also have to educate our voters, because the bottom line is it's our voters who are putting these folks in the position to do what they're doing, and they're the ones who are best positioned to take away that power. And so I think it's really important that we tell the story of how they don't understand our community like we do, and we need to be able to do those policies that our citizens elected us to do, not Tallahassee or any other state capital.
Can you give us a sense of what you see as the future politics of Florida? All of us often think of Florida as a swing state, and then it doesn't quite swing like we had hoped in elections. What do you see as the political future of your state?
It's interesting because my feelings have kind of changed a little bit. If you had asked me that question a year ago, I was very pessimistic about the future of Florida for Democrats and moderates and anyone who wasn't on the far right. But, over the last year, the position that the legislature has taken on a number of issues, that our governor has taken, to some degree, I think they're overplaying their hand a bit. And I know of a number of Republicans in my community, for example, who are really getting frustrated with the positions that the governor and the legislature have been taking, and how extreme those positions have been, and are starting to feel like the state is, the state government at least has moved too far to the right and following Trump too much. And I think that bodes well for us, because I do think it's just a matter of time. It's not going to happen overnight, but I do think that opens the door for that pendulum shift and swing to allow us to get back in power and bring the state back to what it used to be, which was a state where we actually believed in science, we believed in education, in lifting everyone up, and equity and diversity and tolerance.
I've noticed in some of the news articles that you've talked about that you have an influx of people who have decided to move to St. Pete if they can live and work anywhere. St. Pete's a really good place to go to. Do you think any of that COVID remote work migration might swing the politics of Florida a little bit?
I do, and you raise a really great point. We are seeing folks that are relocating from New York, from New Jersey, from California in particular, a lot from San Francisco. We're seeing people relocating from Portland and from Seattle, and even from Texas and in Austin. And it's really picked up in the last 6 months in particular. But we were starting to see it even before COVID, quite honestly, but COVID, I think, has accelerated it. And so, the folks that are coming here are tending to come from states that are blue, or communities certainly that are blue, like Austin, even though tends to be in a red state. But what I'm hearing from them is they're coming here to Florida, and in particular to St. Pete, specifically because they like the politics of the city, they like the values of the city, and that we celebrate diversity and we celebrate equity and tolerance, and they want to be a part of that, and their business wants to be a part of it because that's the values of their businesses.
It's a blessing to have people choose to come to your community, especially those that want to create companies and create jobs. How do you manage some of the those folks are all leaving, whether it's the Bay Area or Seattle or New York, because of concerns about affordability and access to workforce. How do you sort of plan to learn the lessons from those other places so that you aren't sort of repeating the challenges that they've seen?
And that's something that we think about every day. And, that's the beauty of, first off, it's the beauty of our party, but in particular of mayors, is that, we all really look out for each other. We share information, we share best practices, lessons learned. Getting to talk to folks like, for example, Steve Adler in Austin. And I know he's been dealing with challenges as it relates to homelessness, or former Mayor Lee and now, the current mayor in San Fran, about some of those same issues, or affordability, and having those conversations about, all right, we know you're dealing with this. What are you doing, and how effective has that been? We are definitely trying to do that because I think for myself, my entire team here in the city, we've got something special going on in St. Pete right now, and we want to continue growing because we know that, if you're not growing, you're stagnating or you're dying. The best way to lift people up is to create jobs, and that are good paying jobs, and you need to attract business to do that. But how do you do that in a way that you don't destroy the quality of life and the character and the feel of your community that has attracted people to come here to begin with? We are constantly looking for ideas and best practices, and former Labor Secretary Perez, and this is a line I love because I think it resonates so well. He once said, best thing to do is to steal and scale. Steal great ideas from other communities and scale them to your community. And that's exactly what we are trying to do here. We're happy to steal great ideas and then scale them to our community.
Absolutely. That's one of it's one of the best parts about the New Deal, frankly, is you get to go to these conferences and steal a bunch of ideas. And the stealing is very efficient because everyone's in one place. Then you come back and try to implement them and take full credit as mayors are wont to do. So I saw St. Pete got about $45 million from the recovery plan. Hopefully there'll be money flowing down in this infrastructure bill being considered by Congress right now. How do you plan to invest that money to scale, the quality of life and the things that are attractive about St. Pete to both your current residents as well as future residents?
Yeah, and let me say one thing before I answer that question, because we were talking about stealing and scaling and best practices, and it is something I'm very grateful to the New Deal for. It's a think tank. I mean, from my perspective, it is a place, and it is an organization where I know that I can turn to the organization, I can turn to members and other elected officials, and there's just so much great policy. It's all about policy, which I love. That's like the mission of this organization is let's help our elected officials get the best policy ideas possible. And so I'm very appreciative of that. So I really wanted to make sure I said that before I move on to American Rescue Plan. So we decided in St. Pete we wanted to do something a little different than the way we dealt with when we got some CARES Act funding and all of those things. And in particular, we were in the middle of our budget, working on our budget when we first, found out that these dollars were going to be coming down to us. What we kind of decided was, and we heard from the public, is they wanted to have a say in what was happening here. And while we had already started to do some modeling of ways we could spend our $45 million, we decided to go out to the community, and we came up with 5 what we called areas of impact. Infrastructure, which included water, stormwater, sewer, broadband, roads, and transit. Housing affordability and support, health and social equity, economic recovery and resiliency, and then public health and safety. And we held a number of community meetings where we asked each department in the city that fell under those categories, talked a little bit about some of the things that potentially those dollars could go for under those areas of impact. And then we asked the public to rank those areas of impact, and we made a commitment to the community that we would spend our money based on the ranking of what the community felt was the most important need, where we ought to be putting those dollars first and foremost. And then we've now taken the ranking, and we are dividing the funds up between those 5 areas based on that ranking, with the most money going into the one that ranked number 1, followed by 2 through 5. And then we're going to start plugging into those categories, those areas of impact, projects or programs that fall within them. And then we'll take that to City Council for their ultimately approval. But it was really important to us that we wanted the community to feel like we are listening to them, we hear what's important, and that we are going to use these one-time funds to try and address things that the community was most concerned with.
Did anything surprise you that emerged from that ranking process that you don't think would have been, it may have been important, but it may not have been rated as highly had you not engaged the community in that way?
I'd love to say I was surprised, but truthfully, based on the ranking, I wasn't, because housing affordability came in number 1, followed by social equity and then infrastructure, and then economic recovery, resilience, and last was public health and safety. Housing affordability is it's for any successful city, in any city that's growing, and that's so many of our communities all around the country, housing affordability has become a real challenge. And so I figured before we even started the process, that might finish number 1. The order of 2, 3, and 4, I wasn't as certain about. I'm not surprised by it, but I wasn't going into it as certain. I really, based on everything I've been hearing in the last 2 years as mayor of my administration, I was pretty confident housing affordability would come in number 1. And it's also the reason, that my administration is really trying to address it through something we call our For All From All program.
And can you tell us a little bit about that program and what your strategy is?
Yeah, in a city that's as built out as St. Pete is, and it's surrounded by water, and as such we have very limited land that we have available, that makes it even more challenging, to really try and increase your stock of housing that's affordable. And you'll notice I'm saying housing that's affordable as opposed to affordable housing. I've kind of shifted away from using the affordable housing term than we have as an administration, because what we found is that everyone seems to have a different definition for what it is, and frequently when it comes to neighborhoods, when they hear affordable housing, they think of Section 8, or they think of the low income, and that's when you start getting the NIMBYism that comes out. And instead, we've tried to talk about how we need housing that's affordable for everyone at all levels. And so that's the first part when I said for all. We want to make sure that we are creating opportunities for housing for low income, for workforce housing. We want family housing, because St. Pete, as I mentioned, was a built-out community, and as we were growing up, we had a lot of 2-bedroom, 1-bath houses because we were a retirement community for a long time, and now we're more of a younger, vibrant family community, so we need more 3- and 4-bedroom houses. And we are having a lot more people that are moving here, so we still need market rate too. That's the for all piece. The from all piece is trying to tell our community, look, we need to all be a part of this. And whether that means we're looking at spending city taxpayer dollars at purchasing land or contributing and helping subsidize the construction of housing that's affordable, if it means asking developers to be paying into a fund to help fund housing that's affordable, county funding, state funding, federal funding, it's going to take everyone working together, and it also takes neighborhood associations getting away from being NIMBYs and becoming YIMBYs, and being willing to recognize that we can do housing that's affordable in their community and it's dense, but do it in a way that it fits in with their neighborhood. And if it's done right, you can't tell who's living there. You don't know if it's low income or market rate. We've got a 10-year plan. We have something called Penny for Pinellas, where our voters thankfully approved an additional 1-cent sales tax. And as part of our For All From All plan, a percentage of the funds that are generated will go straight to housing.
And I think you brought up a really interesting point that I don't think gets talked about enough in the housing affordability context, which is you not only need housing, you also need the right type of housing for what your community is and will be. And it was interesting how you talked about how your community is shifting from a retirement community to a place where families are settling and growing their lives. How do you think about the type of housing that you want in St. Pete for the future?
Well, we have a vision statement in St. Pete, and the vision statement says St. Pete's going to be a city of opportunity where the sun shines on all who come to live, work, and play. We will be an innovative, creative, and competitive community that honors its past as we pursue our future. And I mention that because I really believe part of the vision statement, the second part of it about being innovative and creative, is we're going to have to be if we're going to solve the housing crunch and the crisis that our city and so many others are facing. And so aside from, looking for opportunities both from development that's occurring on our land and in working with other developers to get them to do a percentage of their project is affordable, we're also looking at our zoning code and our building code and looking for ways of creating more opportunities, whether it's changing zoning to allow more accessory dwelling units or, garage apartments. We just did a ribbon cutting the other day on it's a duplex, technically, but it looks like a single family house. And it's an innovative design that I hadn't seen before, but when you look at it from the outside, you see a single front door, you see windows across the front, and so it looks like a single family house. But if you go to the back of the house, you're going to see another door. And the unit is basically split in half, and so half of the unit you enter from the door in the front of the house, the other half you enter from the door in the back of the house. But for the neighborhood, it looks like a single family home. And so it's that innovation and creativity of I think that's going to help us solve this crisis and its density.
That is that's fascinating. I love that idea. I'm gonna have to steal and scale here in Santa Cruz, as you recommend. I want to shift a little bit to sort of a similar thing when we talk about communities remaining vibrant. As you mentioned, St. Pete's surrounded by water, and we're facing climate change and sea level rise. You've been a leader on the climate issue. Can you talk about what you see both now and into the future for your community as the weather patterns change and seas rise?
Yeah, we're taking it incredibly serious, which we have to. We are, and we've been named one of the most at-risk cities in the country for climate change and sea level rise. So, early in my administration, I made the commitment to become 100% renewable by 2035 and to reduce our CO2 footprint by 80% by 2050. We are honored to have been awarded one of the Bloomberg Philanthropies American Climate City Challenge Awards. And, the Bloomberg Philanthropies and Mike Bloomberg, they really have been such a great friend to cities all across this country, but especially when it comes to the issue of climate change. Mike's been such a leader, and the organization has provided us with amazing resources to help us work towards these goals that we've set. And one of the other things that was really important is you got to have a roadmap, I think, if you're going to try and hit the goals that you've established. And my director of sustainability and resiliency, Sharon Wright, who I don't think she sleeps at all. I think this is all she does. But she helped put together, along with the rest of the city team, what we call our Integrated Sustainability Action Plan, or ISAP plan. And that is what we are using kind of as our roadmap toward becoming more sustainable, more resilient, and helping us to reduce our footprint and do our part of what needs to collectively happen in the state of Florida, across the U.S., and the world. And, being involved in things like the city's Race to Zero, and the great mayor from L.A., Eric Garcetti, who is president of C40, has been leading that challenge. I've been honored to be working with Eric on trying to get as many cities to commit and become a part of the city's Race to Zero. But I think for all of us, it's using our voice, our platform, and being leaders and demonstrating, don't ask people to do things that you're not willing to do yourself. And so, that's what it's going to take, I think, and all of us working together to really start having that impact.
Can I shift slightly, which is to say you are finishing up your term, are termed out and won't be running for office again, but you have all this knowledge around economic development and vitality, around housing affordability, around climate change. Where are you going to be applying your skills in the coming future, or have you had time to even think about it?
Well, if you know anybody that's hiring, I'm looking for a job. Yeah, I jokingly, when the press asks me, "What are you going to be doing?" I love to say, "Well, I'm going to live my life like a Jimmy Buffett song after this." But the reality, truthfully, I don't know yet. I really am hoping that I can do something where I feel like I'm serving my community. I'm still giving back. This job as mayor has been probably one of the most gratifying, personally fulfilling jobs I've ever done in my life, because you can really make a serious impact on your community and lift people up, and that's just a great feeling. So I hope I can find something that I can do that is rewarding and that I can be as passionate about, and that hopefully impacts people's lives. So I haven't figured out what that is yet, but and I'm running out of time, so I got to work fast. But I'm sure I'll figure something out.
Sure, you figure something out. I have to ask, because you were recruited to run for a congressional seat and you opted not to. Can you talk a little bit about, overall in your career, how you've decided where you can best serve and what the best office to be in any given moment is for you?
That's a great question. And truthfully, when I growing up, even in college, this was not something I ever thought I would be doing. I would have never dreamt in my life I would have served an elected office, let alone be the mayor of the city of St. Petersburg. For me, it's always been, I've always loved trying to help people. When I was practicing law, I worked with folks who were injured in accidents or were discriminated against, and that had a disability or a challenge, and somebody was discriminating against them. So I always wanted to use my time on this planet to try and make a difference in some form or fashion. When it came to running for office, it was, you always, I think, have to be realistic. And and look at it. Do I realistically have a chance, first off, of being successful in the run? And if I don't, is there a reason I'm running? Maybe you're setting yourself up for the run the next time. It shouldn't just be driven by ego. And so I always want to look at that, but I also want to look at the position and say, is this a position I'd be interested in, and do I think I can make a difference? And so, running for starting at city council and then moving up to the state house and then ultimately to this job was easy, because I was watching what was happening, for example, in St. Pete, and I knew the mayor. I actually served with him on city council, and he was a nice guy, and he's a good man. But I just didn't see that he was changing the lives for the better of the city and was moving the city forward, and I thought I could do a better job. And so that's why I decided to run. For Congress, it is a job I've always had an interest in, but, I think we're at a point or a place which I'm a little concerned about where, I wish we could get away from the influence of money and how, you've got to have it, obviously, to run for office, but it felt like the more I talked to folks about the position, that it consumed your time getting elected and then staying elected, as opposed to the policy, which, again, I like policy and I like trying to do things that make a difference. And if I'm spending all my time fundraising and campaigning, and as opposed to working on policy and, trying to help my community, that's not what I want. And so for me personally, that was the decision that, what works for me doesn't necessarily work for somebody else. I looked at the position of Attorney General or Governor here in Florida, and I had concerns about whether it was winnable by me. Not to say that seat's not winnable by another Democrat, either of those seats, because I think they are. But I didn't think I was the right guy at the right time, and timing plays a big part of it too. You have to be the right person at the right time with the right message. So a lot of things have to happen to be successful. I've had 8 campaigns over 21 years, and I've only thankfully lost one, which was my first one. Learned some valuable lessons and didn't repeat them, the mistakes. But that's kind of the way I look at things.
I think that's a really smart analysis and hopefully helpful to elected officials out there listening, contemplating what they do next. And frankly, I think your analysis of Congress is sad but true. And so you have to be willing to accept that dynamic, which is distasteful to so many of us who just want to go and do the work and do the service. That's such a big component of being in elective office.
Yeah, my last race for re-election, unfortunately for my city, was probably the nastiest race our city has ever seen, but it was also the most expensive race our city has ever seen. And I did what I had to do to, from a fundraising standpoint to be successful. But I think it also showed me that, if I'm not passionate and I'm not 100% all in, and this goes for any position you're thinking about running for, man, if you're not all in, don't do it, because you're going to put yourself and your family through all kinds of hell, and you don't want to do that. You got to be all in. You got to be, ready and willing to do everything that you've got to do to win. And my heart just wasn't in 30 to 40 hours a week of fundraising, especially while because I'd had to start right away. And, at that point in time when I made the decision, I still had 6, 7, 8 months of my term as mayor left. And I still, even with 3 months left, I still have a lot I want to get done. I'm not done yet. I'm not done until my last day, January 5th. That's my last day. That's when I'll be done. But until that day, I'm working, because I got stuff I want to do, and there's things we can do to help this community still, and I'm not ready to quit.
The Jimmy Buffett lifestyle has to wait until January 6th, it sounds like.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can I ask, I'm a firm believer that being mayor is the single best job, not only in politics, but maybe the world. What do you think that you'll miss most about being mayor?
So, well, I can't give you a single answer. I'll give you a couple things. One, I'm incredibly blessed. I've got 3,500 employees here in St. Pete, and I have never worked in my life with a better group of people. Especially my administrators and my staff. These are folks that are so dedicated to this city and to trying to do right and do the right thing. And it's just a joy to work with them every day. And so I'm going to miss the people that I work with. I'm going to miss the energy that I get from this community. I love when I have events and I'm out in public, because there's just an energy here in St. Pete that is really special. It's just a really welcoming, warm community with really great people. And so I'm going to miss that. And I love when I get a chance to do things with kids and visit schools. And we have an anti-bullying program that I have called Be a Buddy, Not a Bully. And I really have enjoyed that program because, it's such a huge issue in our schools, and we don't control the school system here in this state of Florida. It's their counties, districts, and there's elected school boards. So it's not, like in New York or Chicago or other cities where the city runs the school district. We don't here. And so I was looking for ways of having an impact, even though we don't run it. And programs like that are just going and meeting with the kids and talking with them. Or my Mayor's Youth Congress program, where I'm teaching kids about government and how laws get made and how they can work to stop bad things from happening to them that they don't like. And then taking them to the Capitol. And these are kids who oftentimes have never even left the city limits. Those are the kind of things that I think I'm going to miss about this job. And it's without question, it's the best job I've ever had. I don't know that there is a better job in politics than being mayor, just because of the impact that you can have on your community. And it's been an amazing 8 years.
Couldn't agree more. It's making me wistful for my days as mayor even. I want to thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your work, not only for St. Pete, but again, as creating ideas that the rest of us can steal to improve our communities around the country. It's really been a pleasure talking to you today.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate everything you guys do. Like I said before, just having folks that as an elected official, I can call one of the members of the New Deal or staff up and say, hey, I'm dealing with this issue. You know anybody that's ever dealt with this before or experienced it? It is so helpful. And it really does make a difference. And so I thank you guys for being there for all of us and being a great sounding board and support system that really helps us do our jobs better. I
agree. And I hope to come down, live the Jimmy Buffett lifestyle with you post your term and enjoy everything you've done in St. Pete to make it such a vibrant, livable city. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks a lot. And you're certainly welcome to come visit us anytime along with anyone else who's listening.
Thanks for listening to An Honorable Profession. Please subscribe to hear more amazing leaders and keep asking your elected officials to be honorable. Boots Road Group produces podcast. I'm Ryan Coonerty, and because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars were used in the making of this podcast.